Okay, so we are live for our finishing our second week of our virtual speaker series, and we're super excited. We have a great session here planned for today. We have Rob Bennett and James Macanufo. James, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. They are game designers, video game designers from Bloxels and Pixels Press, I believe. Is that right, guys?
That's correct.
Sure. So, and for our viewers out there, right? Again, I'm Paul Gazzone from Oceanside High School, assistant principal, and those of you at the middle level, you know, Dr. Glickman Rogers, she's your principal, and we thank everyone for showing up like you guys do every single day, especially our boys right now, Joseph Capone and Ben Strauss. You guys, every day you're here, so we do this for guys like you. Again, viewers, you can feel free to make a comment in the comment box. Well, anything, any questions that you have, we'll try to pop up and display to everybody else. And we're looking forward to a great session. And just for today, I wore my favorite video game of all time. I know it's a show, but I love the video game T-shirt. I had to dig in and find out where it was, and I went in a box, Dr. Glickman, and there it was. So I had to break it out for today. So
when I
he's lying. He wears that all the time on the weekends.
Yeah, it's actually my Friday work shirt.
He's lying.
Yep, it's actually my Friday work shirt. And so it happened to work out totally perfect.
The first time I built a Raspberry Pi arcade, the first game I installed was that guy. So that's a good one.
Wow.
Yeah.
So James, Rob, please refer to me as Paul and Allison. I know our names are highlighted as such, but we're keeping it informal. Keep it light. We're gonna have some fun. Again, we're not in our offices. We're in our, maybe you guys are, but we're in our houses. James has a couple things going on.
Mr. Gazzone, Mr. Heron's here, but he's on YouTube. Mr. Heron, can you go into your email? We sent you a link from StreamYard. Can you click the StreamYard link so that you could join us on the screen?
Yep, I sent you, John. I sent you 2 emails with the link. So, there he is. He's here.
Oh, good.
All right, and we have a guest.
Hi guys.
Guest commentator, Mr. John Heron from Oceanside Middle School. So, John, he teaches our computer coding class. Is that what you teach, John?
Yes, computer coding class.
Okay, so
it's really a club. It's a little more laid back. It's a club for kids. In the middle.
Great, and we thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring in John and make a little connection here, especially with the students that he teaches. So, excited for a great session. So, Rob and James, why don't we start off by, we kind of like asking our guests, just kind of give us a little background about yourselves, what you guys do. So just general information to kind of kick us off.
James.
Oh, I was going to call on you. So it's nice to meet everybody. Glad to join in. So I'm James Macanufo, and at Pixel Press, we're a small company. So we're about 5 people. So I wear a lot of hats. I'll do some of the creative stuff, some of our marketing stuff. One of the things that I do a lot of is I listen to people, whether they email us in or send us comments on our YouTube videos. And I try to look for those patterns where it's like people want a new feature in the app. So one of the things that I try to do is like look for those patterns and then take them back and formulate with the team like how we might do something that people are asking for. So that's something that I do. When I'm not working, I am working on my house. So this is not my usual office. This is my first floor of my house, which I've been slowly but surely remodeling. So that's a little bit of what you see behind me. So yeah, that's me. How about you, Rob?
I am Rob. I'm one of the founders of Pixel Press, the company that created Bloxels. And I've been with the company from day one. I am now the CEO. So I kind of run the day-to-day operations, but I'm also a full-time programmer. So that's kind of how I started when we created this company. I was the tech guy, and then my co-founders were community, creative, and business. So I've kind of taken over the business side of things, but I'm also a full-time programmer. So I'm building a lot of the stuff that's in the app.
That's great. And before we ask some more questions, and John, I may let you lead this a little bit because you have a little bit more experience in this game design stuff than Allison or I. But I just do want to give a big shout out to Angela Aden. She is a project extra teacher for Oceanside School District. She actually was the one that really kind of connected all of us together, right? So I knew that we had some interest in getting some game designers on our show, and she kind of connected us through Twitter. So thank you so much, Angela, for doing that. So John, you have some questions you want to lead with to Rob and James?
Sure. So a lot of the kids that I work with are in 7th and 8th grade, and they do it as a hobby. They like playing games, but I'm wondering if you guys could give them a little bit of insight about what they could do to actually take it to the next level where they're doing a little bit more with the creation. We've done a little bit of HTML and a little bit of JavaScript. Could you talk maybe a little bit about what languages you guys use and how maybe you got into it when you were younger?
Sure. I could take that. So when I started, unfortunately, it was a really long time ago. But when I started, HTML, CSS, JavaScript were in their infancy. Actually, the web didn't even have JavaScript when I very first started coding. But really, over the years, I've built up my knowledge through books. And then as Google kind of got more and more powerful, I started using Google. And then, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, Stack Overflow, when that really started to take off, I used Stack Overflow a lot. So I'm what you call self-taught. I did not go to school for this. So I've taught myself when I was in high school and middle school and elementary school. There really wasn't anything like this. The earliest memory I have of working on code in school was in high school. I think my junior year, we had a graphic design lab, and one of my projects, I chose to do a website, which was a simple HTML page. So if you're using HTML, JavaScript right now, I think JavaScript's an excellent language to learn anything in. It's super powerful. It's nothing like it was when it first, got written. ECMAScript 6, 7, the modern versions of JavaScript now are really, they're really a powerful language. So you can write a lot in them. I think Phaser IO is a game engine built in JavaScript. That's a great one to play around with. Impact.js was another good one that I played around with years ago. But there's a handful of them out there. I would get a library and start using the libraries like Phaser, so that you're not messing with too much of the core engine stuff, because what you really want to learn first is just the basics of design and coding for what it is that you want to build. So something that we kind of stick to at Pixel Press is the right tool for the right job. So some languages, for our capture piece where you actually scan, we use computer vision for scanning. Right. Can't really use JavaScript for that. I mean, you could now probably, but when we first started doing this, you really couldn't. So you got to have a lower level language. But for starting out and learning, I think JavaScript's excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, can I could throw out some additional thoughts on that from the design perspective. So when I was a kid, we had an old computer that my dad brought home from IBM. And we'd always get these old computers that they didn't use anymore. And one of the coolest things about it was it had BASIC on it. And BASIC came with every computer, and it had these like starter games. One was where these gorillas would throw bananas at each other and try to blow each other up and things like that. And that's what sparked it for me, was the idea of like, oh, I want to make things move around on the screen. I want to make games like that. And that was a while ago. Things have gotten a lot easier since then. And I would say that if you're a student and you're in elementary school, even middle school, and you're starting to do some actual coding and things like that, and you want to take the step to make a game, games are a great way to learn how to code. They're a great way because first of all, they're just a lot more fun than a lot of other types of coding. So like Rob mentioned, there's some great JavaScript libraries out there. There's also just some great tools and platforms that I've used in some of my classes because I teach game design at a local university. Certainly Bloxels is a fun one that's no code. Anybody can jump in and build with it, and that's our intention. But then there's things like GameMaker. GameMaker is great because it has its own kind of scripting language built in that's really easy to understand. It still kind of makes you think through what you're trying to do logically. but it's as far as I can tell, one of the easiest on ramps. There's a lot of great tutorials out there on the web in terms of like, hey, I want to make, if you're looking for an initial idea and that's the blocker, like just take a game you like and take some simple part of it. Like I'm going to make asteroids. I'm going to make my version of asteroids, something like that, and go from there.
Tear something apart. That's what I always tell people. If you're learning to tinker and you're learning to things outside of code, if you're learning to solder or you're learning to put things together, the best way is to take something that you already like and tear it apart and rebuild it. So I always say find a code base that's open source and something you like, because there's quick time to output. So that's one of the things where if you can get something working, this is what James was alluding to, get something working on the screen immediately, you're going to feel that momentum. You're going to feel that excitement. And I think trying to do it the way I did it, which was, one line at a time, isn't necessarily the most fun. So I'd say tear something apart.
Yeah, that's all that junking things out to junk out an old radio and just see how it's made. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the challenge of getting, I got a lot of different levels and of ability and interest in the club. So that's the challenge, is getting kids to be able to do something that's pretty easily accessible and that they can see the results pretty quickly. One of the things that we sometimes do is I'll give them a little piece of code that does something, and then I'll have them edit it, even in something like simple like a text editor. When you do an HTML, they can go in and just make some changes and then refresh the screen and have like the web page change.
Yeah.
So we've been doing that. And like some of the things that you guys are suggesting are great, really great things for them to get into it. I have a couple of kids who got into it on their own when I showed them some basics of HTML and JavaScript, and really put some pretty cool stuff together, just going home and doing things on the internet.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Okay, just share it. I think it's pretty cool that John and Rob and James are pretty much all talking the same language, right? In the sense of HTML and Java, and so it kind of like for the viewers out there who are students and looking at game design and coding and saying, hey, the classes I'm taking in school, is this really, how it works in the real world? And the answer is yes, right? So right here, you can see that it's a real life learning opportunity for those students who are interested in those type of programs, which is great. And John, just so you know, on the right hand side, you see that comment box. So students may ask some questions. So feel free you may want to pop in and then use some of the students' questions to guide some of this conversation.
Okay, you know what? I had it on the wrong tab. I couldn't see that. Now I can see it.
Okay, cool.
There are some good ones in here already.
James, answer a question, and then whichever one you answer, I'll highlight it on the screen.
Well, I'll just say I have a friend who mods Minecraft. So the Minecraft question about Java and Bedrock, I just sent it to him. It's because I want a real expert to answer that one.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll come back to that one. Rob, was it hard to start your business off? I feel like that's your question.
Oh my gosh. Starting?
That was one of my questions too. That's a great one.
Well, a good one for Rob to answer. Yeah, for sure. Because he started a number of different businesses, but yeah.
I have. So this is, I don't even know what number this is. I've started many businesses over my life. I will say that starting is easy. Very easy. But maintaining is what the difficult part is. So create a cadence or create a flow for yourself that you can maintain and that you can sustain. So that's what I always say. A lot of people, there's like a big hustle culture in our society where it's like you got to work 80 hours a week and you kill yourself and all that kind of stuff. And I think there's something to that for a moment, but that's only how you get started. To actually maintain, it's like sprinting versus jogging. If you want to go further for longer, then pace yourself and learn to balance your life. I know that's not like the business advice that people want to hear, but that's the kind of advice that I like to give because I think that's the only thing that's kept me sane. But starting a business is not that hard, and my biggest advice for that is just do it. Finding a way to sustain that business as fast as possible is your best bet, and that's usually money. So if you want to start a business, figure out a way to make money real quick. There's a lot of tutorials and articles out there that'll tell you to get investment and go out there and take money from other people and build companies that way. And that's one way to do it. And some people really luck out that way. But the best way to keep your sanity and be in it for the long haul, if you really believe in something, is to figure out a way to make money really quickly.
And that's cool because most of our kids have time on their sides right now. I mean, a lot of the kids who I notice over here are my students who are 8th graders. And, if they have the time to learn the skills. So if they have a great idea, they don't really need a lot of capital or money.
Yeah,
to start
absolutely. Absolutely. And if they want to fund their endeavor, even at a young age, if you want to buy books, let's say, to learn more about what it is that you want to learn, there's ways to do that. I mean, the reason that I didn't go to school for what I do have a college degree. But I was actually building websites back in the 90s. I was in a band and I was a musician, as you can kind of see back there. And I built websites for other bands. And I started out by just building websites for my own band. This is in high school and they were terrible. This is in the mid 90s, so they were not good. But I was building websites for my own band. And then I started to build websites for other bands because they were like, well, we want a website. No one knows how to do that. So I started doing that and they paid me, and it was very, very little money, but just a little bit here and there. And it kind of like fueled me and got me excited about, holy cow, this could be a career. So I went to college and I got my degree, but I ended up kind of finishing college and then going back to software development because it was a way for me to make a living. So that's how I did it.
I think actually there was a segue here. I feel like this one, how has video game design changed in the last 20 years?
That's a good one.
There's a segue there because lots of ways, but the ones that I think of, the thing that got me back into video game design, because actually my career before doing games was I was a journalist and I was doing maps and charts and diagrams and that kind of thing. And then I did some other stuff, but I got back into games because I went to the store and I picked up the first iPhone. I think it was like 2007, 2008. And I experienced using a mobile phone for the first time that was like that. And I thought, I want to make games for this. And that's what sparked it for me. And I think that mobile environment changed everything for games in a lot of ways. So one of the things that it changed that is a really positive thing, I think, is that back in the old days, if you had an idea for a game and you were at home or you were working with your friends and you worked really hard on it, you still needed to work really hard to get it out into the world. You needed a publisher. You needed somebody who was going to spend a lot of money, like burning your games to CD-ROMs and sending them out to stores so people could buy them and things like that. And one of the things that mobile did was, and the internet in general, is it made it a lot easier for individuals and what we call like indie gamers, independent developers, to just publish their own stuff and have a direct connection with the people who are playing their games. I think that was a super positive thing, and I kind of tie that to like what happens, in that time around mobile.
Well, it allowed you.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, it allowed you to iterate. So the biggest thing that you couldn't do 20, 30 years ago is iterate and update and have something like a minimum viable product and get that to market, get it out to people to see if they like it. And then start to work through the problems and the changes and things that you want to make. Back 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, you had to, like James was saying, you had to package it up and send it off, and then you were done. That was it.
And then just cross your fingers.
And if there's anything wrong with it, it was in there and it was good and it was forever.
So Rob, you keep using the word iterate. Can you just maybe define that a little bit more for our students?
Yeah. So iterate is if I make a game. And let's say let's use James's basic example. I have gorillas that throw bananas at other gorillas, and that's my game. And I publish that, and everyone says, that's really cool. I like that, but it'd be really neat if they threw oranges also. I can go back, iterate, and add oranges in there. And then I can say, do you like the way that the oranges are thrown, or do you think it should be faster or slower, anything like that? Then I'll go back and then I'll change it based on feedback, and then I'll release it again. And that whole process is called iteration. That's iterating.
Cool. So I just want to highlight one question from Miss Epps is our app creation teacher at the high school, and she's on and she has a question. Do you have any books you could recommend for students?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, yes. Go ahead, Rob.
No, go.
I mean, well, so I'm going to start with video game stuff, I mean, there's, yeah, of course, there's some great books out there across a lot of different topics. One that I think is just a really fun book that I'm sure there's like an ebook version of it out there is called A Theory of Fun. And I believe the author's name is Raf Koster. I might be getting that wrong. Somebody, I mean, we're on computers. You can figure out if I made a mistake there. But it talks about like what makes games fun and what doesn't make games fun. And I think it's just a really great intro to somebody who's kind of curious about game design. And the stuff that he talks about is really nicely illustrated because he's done these like just, cool little doodles that go along with all his concepts. And I think that's a good one. There's the story of Minecraft, which I don't know if you guys have heard of this game, Minecraft. I think it's a thing. I think it's going to be a thing, which is the story of Notch. I think of him as Notch. I forget his actual name, but it's kind of the behind the scenes of how Minecraft came to be, which is also a good one. I could ramble on, but those are two good ones to kind of start with if you're interested in this topic.
Those are great. Mine are not going to be game related, so I'm not sure.
You read a lot, though, Rob. You read more than I do. You're always talking about like your, yeah. Go ahead.
I read a ton, but I don't know if they're too. I don't know if they're age appropriate. There's a couple of really good ones. Dream and Code is a great one. It's an older book. The Agile Manifesto is a great, like, super quick read. And it's just about that concept of iterating and iteration and minimum viable products and getting things to market and seeing if people like it and all that kind of stuff. So that's a cool read. My favorite book right now is in the last year is Why We Sleep. It's a great book, and sleep is really important, and I can't stress that enough. Everyone should get lots of sleep.
So, Rob and James, a big thing, a big part of why we put this kind of series together is we want to bring in professionals, connect with them, and kind of help our students understand skills needed that they should be working on now to be successful in that profession, right? And we're really fortunate right now because not only do we have students, maybe some parents on, but we also have Mr. Heron, John Heron, and Miss Epsa who's watching, and they're teachers of coding, and so like. Tell us, like, what skills do you think students should be working on, and maybe teachers should be focusing on during the middle level years as well as the high school level years?
Collaboration and critique. Those are the biggest.
I agree. Yeah.
You could be the best programmer in the world, but if you can't collaborate or take criticism or give criticism in a constructive way, then the world is going to be very difficult for you. So I will say that I hire people for our company, and I've hired a lot of developers and designers and also marketing people, all sorts of people. And the most successful ones are the ones that work well with other developers. So if you work on a team making video games or making software apps or really anything, if you work on a team, you're going to have to do stuff like check in and check out code, and you're going to have to review each other's code so that you can make sure that there aren't any bugs in there and all that kind of stuff. And if you do that in a negative way, or you're not good at, playing on team and all that, it makes it really difficult. And I think the best products come from really tight-knit teams that work really well together.
I'm really good. Sorry, Mr. Luzon, I just want to shout out to the middle school, our STEM program and our art program. We have a unit that we call the Fab Lab, where the two subject areas really work together through the design process. And at the heart of the unit, students are creating a product, and students on the other half of the class are critiquing, giving feedback so that the designers can update the product and make it a little bit better. So they're working in teams to design this product. The students on the other end of the class are, their role is to critique and to give feedback, and then the designers go back. So I'm happy to hear that you say that collaboration, that ability to collaborate and to critique, to give and take feedback is such an important skill, because we do adjust that in our technology and our art program at the middle school. So the students can get a sense of, how other experiences other than being part of the coding club can help them to pursue a career in coding or gaming?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, those are amazing skills for any career that you want to go into. But even if you decide, if there's some students out there that are saying, well, I just want to make a game by myself and I'm not going to have to work with anybody else. That's a thing. And that's a very real thing. James and I have both done that. The problem is there's still the world, and you're going to share that with the world, and they're going to give you comments, and they're going to critique you, even if whether you want them to or not. So taking that, weeding out the bullies, and taking the people that maybe you don't want to hear it, but it's good for you to hear. That learning that is super. I can't stress enough how important that is. Yeah,
that sounds like good advice for any professional.
It is.
Yeah. When I go on,
you were asking questions just before, so.
James, do you want to give an answer that's
No, I feel like you took the words out of my mouth. I mean, there's
Sorry.
a lot. It's correct. And it does apply to all professions. I would say that, maybe specifically in video games, I think this maybe applies to other things too. Just in my experience, the first 2 to 5% of the project is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun because you have the new idea and you're getting your initial sketches down. Like I said, you make something move around on the screen, you get a sound effect in there and you're like, yes. And you get goosebumps. And then you stare down the rest of the work to be done for it to be a complete polished thing. Yeah. And I think that does apply to really anything. And so just having the gumption, the grit, whatever word you want to use, to stick with it. And that is where teammates will help. Because if you are a good collaborator and you have a good partner who will keep you going, then you'll be way more likely to stick through to the end and ship your game.
Absolutely. We worked on 2.0, which someone else asked about, the Bloxels 2.0 update that just came out. We worked on that for a really long time. And honestly, we got it about 80% of the way. And that 80% of the way went fairly quick. It was the last 20% that was really a lot of work. And that's when you get in there and you're in the trenches and you start slogging along, and it gets you can feel defeated and you can feel like it's never going to get finished. But the best thing you can do is create some kind of pace for yourself where you're in it for the long haul and you're going to see it to the end. And like I said, it's like starting a company. Starting is easy. Maintaining is what's difficult.
So that may lead us into this question here, which is what are some of the new features coming with updated Bloxels 2.0?
James, you want to do that?
So I think the big thing that's has a lot of features inside it that's in 2.0, which is out now, and we've already released a couple of updates, smaller updates since 2.0 was originally launched, is what we call Character Lab. So Character Lab is all about doing more stuff with your characters. So if you were familiar with the old Bloxels from a couple of years ago, you could do things like make them small, make them big, give them different ways of jumping and moving, different DNA, if you will. So that's really, I think, a lot of what Character Lab tries to encapsulate, which is I want to make something special about my character, whether it's the hero that's in the game or the enemies that they're encountering, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of other updates, like the whole game editor was updated to be just based on user feedback to kind of open it up and make it so you could see more of your game and a little faster to edit things. But Character Lab, I think, is where a lot of the creative power is going to be. And we've already seen just some really cool kind of characters and stories come out of people publishing to the arcade.
We have a lot of cool videos about 2.0 specifically on our YouTube channel. So there's a lot of great stuff. We spent a lot of time, building that content. So just check it out. So
one thing I want to talk about, and I think as game designers, you probably experience this more than maybe a lot of people in different professions, and it has to do with failure and mistakes, right? So when you're coding, right, you're probably making like 1,000 mistakes a day, right? I mean, I'm not a coder. I don't know anything about coding, but what I've done in the past was if I looked at a website, I've kind of gone in the HTML or whatever it's called, and I've changed some numbers and I see what it does to the screen, right? So that's constantly making mistakes, and I guess failing is kind of the word, right? But you guys are designing from scratch, so you're coding. I'm sure you make mistakes constantly because that's part of the learning process, right? You make mistakes. You learn and you grow. Right? But so I mean, in some sense, I almost feel like you guys are probably experts in dealing with mistakes and failure and taking those moments and opportunities to better yourself and create a product that's better than it was before, right? So how do you deal with those moments, right? How do you deal with those moments of, I can't get this to look the way I want it to look. I can't figure out the correct sequence, whatever it is. And I'm sure it could keep you up to 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning at times, right? How do you deal with that, right? Because I mean, that skill right there is much more than sitting on a computer and coding. It's really like a life skill, kind of dealing with failure and mistakes and not letting yourself get too frustrated. How do you, from the experts, I would say, is how do you deal with that?
I have a lot of people ask me in various formats, what is it like to code, and how do I get started coding? And one of the things I usually say is something along the lines of most of your life is going to be learning to fix something. So I think if you can realize that creation is actually only, I don't even know if it's 50%, James, it's probably more like 20%. I'd say 80% of your life is fixing things and problem solving when you're coding. So there are a lot of times where I'll hit a brick wall. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. Our senior engineer has also been doing it for 20 plus years. And there's a lot of times where we both hit brick walls. And I think a lot of times when I'm trying to do that, take it that extra 5%, or why isn't this thing moving the way I need it to move? The worst thing in the world is when something's not working in the app and then you start looking at the debugger, which is it's like a text console that kind of tells you what's wrong. And that's not doing anything either. So you're just sitting there I don't know what's going on. I have no idea. This should be working. So I think a lot of times what we end up doing, it goes back to that collaboration. The first thing I do is I jump on Stack Overflow or I hit Google and I start, trying to figure out, okay, have other people seen this, which is a form of collaboration, I guess. And then if I can't find that pretty quick, I will jump over to one of our teammates and I'll say, okay, I'm banging my head against this. Can you help me out? And 2 brains is always better than 1. So we'll jump on something like this, like Slack or Zoom or something, and we'll work together to fix it because we're a remote team. So we're not sitting next to each other all day long. So we'll work together to fix it, and 9 times out of 10 we can fix it pretty quick if it's two or three people. So I'd say reach out, find help. I've told my team many times, don't spin your wheels. If it takes more than 15 minutes to figure out, ask somebody, because it's inevitable that someone has run up against the problem that you're having. Mm-hmm. James, would you say that?
Yeah, that's exactly. We use the term rubber duck sometimes, which I think is a fun image to put in your head. I would not recommend anyone, whatever problem you're trying to solve, stay up late and try to fix it, because what you're going to do is you're going to rob your brain of the ability to sleep on it, which is actually a wonderful thing to do. If you're stuck on your own and you need some sort of insight or some new way of thinking about something, there is some science that says sleeping on it actually lets you do a little bit of problem solving in a different way.
That has fixed many things for us.
Yeah, for sure. But rubber duck is when you have someone who you're sitting next to, or through Zoom or whatever, and you just talk through how you're trying to solve the problem. So they aren't actually giving you the answer. They're just like a rubber duck, kind of parroting things back at you. Someone to talk to about it, and that it's enormously helpful when you have to articulate what you're trying to do. How that'll help find a breakthrough.
Talk through your problems. They will absolutely, you'll get somewhere, even if the person you're talking to, has no idea what you're saying.
Okay. Can I ask, my son is listening and just wants to know what can you tell him about Fortnite? Do you know the people that invented it? He wants to know.
So I actually like Fortnite. I don't play it as much as other people do, but one of my favorite things about it is not necessarily the gameplay, but what's happened around the game. which is that it's taught a lot of people some different cool dances. That's my favorite thing about it.
Show 'em it in.
Like, how else would I know how to floss if it weren't for Fortnite?
Right.
That's, that's the thing.
That's very important for us middle school people. We have to be down with the dances.
Oh yeah.
Got to be able to do them. And I think that's, it's one way to learn.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're over at 30 minutes, so we're gonna wrap up shortly. I do want to maybe ask some of the questions of our students quick, and how about Hannah? Why did you make it so you can't go back and edit mistakes?
Did we do that?
I don't know. I'm going by Hannah.
I'm not sure.
You can't go back and edit mistakes.
I would say
I'm guessing that maybe what you're talking about is like if you publish a game to the arcade.
James, you froze.
You did.
I think what James was saying is that if you publish a game to the arcade, now you can still go in and update it if you want to make changes to it. And I think that maybe there was some confusion there. Maybe it has to do with undo, which is still in there. I would say if there's a confusion or question, I'm really not trying to like plug our YouTube channel, but there are a lot of tutorials on our YouTube channel that go through all the update, the 2.0 update, and go through very specifically what changed and what stayed the same. I would give those a try, and if not, you can always reach out to us. And maybe you're having a problem that we aren't aware of, or maybe there's a problem that we didn't make it obvious enough, and so we'd love to hear that. So I think reaching out and asking us exactly what you're seeing, that would be my best bet.
For sure.
Right.
I think I dropped for a second. Am I back, guys?
Yeah, you did. You're good.
Okay. All right. Real quick, somebody who asked the earlier question, Bedrock versus the Java version of Minecraft. I got an answer back. The Bedrock version is made to be lightweight, so it can run with less CPU and stuff. It's super basic, and I don't think you can mod it. That's it.
All right.
Okay.
And I got one more question, and then I'm going to ask you guys for maybe some concluding remarks, and then we're going to wrap up. All right, guys?
Sure.
So I don't know what this means, but Vincent Capone says, how does a game engine work? Is a game engine like API?
So API is basically just an interface for talking to packages of code. So if I write something, you might not understand. I don't know who I'm pointing to. Let's say James. If I write something, James might not understand exactly what I wrote, and he might not even know. There might be thousands of lines of code in something that I wrote, and I want it to do certain things. And I expose pieces of that code to allow someone like James to go in and utilize what I wrote. So it's kind of like the Minecraft mods. Some of that stuff is exposed so that you can take advantage of it. That's what an API generally is. A game engine has APIs built into it, but it's more of a bigger wrapper for all of that stuff. A game engine is like the umbrella for the entire game and how it works and how it functions. It's the physics, it's the collisions, it's the not usually the art, it's usually the base underlying mechanics of how the game functions. And there are APIs exposed in that game engine that allow you to take advantage of various pieces of that engine. So let's say, really quick, if I have a game engine and it allows my game engine is a platformer engine like Mario or like Bloxels, and you're allowed to jump. I want to know, as a programmer, I want to use your game engine, and I want to know what happens when you land. I want to get notified that you just landed on the ground so that I can make smoke appear. And that is an API. I can dig into that API and say, okay, Rob, as the programmer, told me when the character lands, so now I'm going to put smoke in so that it's like a poof when that character lands. And that's kind of how an API works. And the engine is the thing that supports that.
So John's nodding his head like he understands that language. That right over my head, Allison.
I have no idea what just went on.
So all right, we're just going to wrap up. And I'm just going to ask you guys a question that I've kind of been asking everybody at the end is that, again, the purpose of here is kind of really exposing our students to different professions, different careers. And what kind of advice and recommendation would you have for students you could take it one of two ways. One is like a student that, wants to be a game designer, or just maybe like find a niche for themselves career wise. Like, what type of things do you think they should be doing, as K-12 learners? In a sense, like, you guys seem very happy in what you're doing, right? And that's really important. Just from this conversation, I get that feeling. And, so what do you think our learners should be doing as they're going through their schooling to try to kind of find their niche and find their passion? And what kind of recommendation do you guys have?
James, you, me?
Yeah, I'll go quickly. I feel like I've already had, so I'm 41 years old, and I feel like I've had 3 careers. When I was 18, I really wanted to be a writer, so I got into journalism. And then I did some other stuff, some businessy stuff, basically for a while. And I always had the passion for game design, so I always knew I would come back to it. But I would say that my advice would be, you probably have a lot of passions as a person, especially in middle school and high school. There's just like the whole world is, there are all these possible paths to go down. And I would say, don't feel like you're closing doors just because you pick one. So like, just pick your first one. And beyond that, like your world and your life is going to contain all sorts of things and adventures. So just make sure that like, whatever one you pick first, that like you always make sure that you're learning and checking in with yourself and having a good time with it. And that as those other doors open up, like, make sure you see them and or create them for yourself.
I couldn't agree more. I was literally going to say, my advice is that whatever you think you want to do right now, or whatever you choose to do when you leave high school, it's not finite. That first thing you do does not have to be the only thing you do forever. It can be if it's something that you love and that you're passionate about, but you can change your mind. And that's what makes us human. We can adapt and weave and change, and embracing that and being excited about that. And you should love what you do. You really should. There's just no reason not to. So if there's something that you love that you don't feel like is the right thing to go into, figure out how to make it the right thing to go into and give it a fair shot. Because eventually you'll be like James, or you'll be like me, because I've done the same thing. You'll go through multiple career paths. It'll wind and twist and fork and do all these crazy things. And hopefully you land kind of where you wanted, where that original thing was. So try it out early. The best thing about being young is that you can do crazy things and make crazy decisions. And the impact is somewhat minimal at first. It only gets a little bit more difficult as you have, kiddos running around and a wife or a husband. And so try things out early and find something that you're passionate about.
I think that's a good opportunity for us, Paul, to just mention the middle school clubs, the high school clubs, the classes like Miss Epps teaches at the high school. You might not think that coding is a club. I don't know. It's not really what I'm into, but you don't know unless you try. And we've said this now on 2 episodes. It's important to try, even if what you learn is that it's not for you. You don't
100%.
do that unless you try it. So we're really fortunate in Oceanside. We have many clubs, and each year different clubs are offered, both at all levels, elementary, middle school, and high school. And it's so important that all of the students take advantage so they can kind of figure out what some of their interests might be, what their passions are or are not, what kind of skills they have. And they might find that there's something that they are particularly interested in, or a skill that comes naturally to them that they want to pursue. And it's amazing that we have teachers like Mr. Heron. Our teachers have other passions outside of teaching. And that's what makes some of the clubs so awesome, is that, Mr. Heron's a math teacher. The students didn't necessarily know that this was a skill set or a passion that he has. And it's fun for the students to learn something alongside their teachers that's like outside of the curricular area. And we have many clubs like that. So,
James, I was identifying with what you said earlier, because I started coding when I was probably 10 years old with the basic programming language on an Apple IIe.
Nice. Nice.
Floppy disk.
Those are still good games.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right, guys. So, James and Rob, thank you so much for doing this. John, thank you for being our guest commentator. But James and Rob, we're always actually, in Oceanside at the high school, every year we have this thing called a career forum. We're always inviting people in person into our our building and speak to our students about different careers. And we're always looking for game designers. And I don't think we've ever thought like outside the box of, maybe we don't need to have someone there in person, right? Why not set up a screen and maybe do something like this? So, next year when things are a little different, we may be reaching out and seeing if we could kind of bring you in this way, right? Because I think that would work great. But again, thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you guys for being part of this. And just for everyone else who's watching, on Monday we have a 4th District Council member, Anthony D. Esposito, coming on board. And then on Tuesday we have prosthetist Robert Schulman from the Limb Kind Foundation, who's been working with our Project Extra team as well. So we're looking forward to next week. And thank you everyone for coming, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you guys. Thank you.